Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Finding the Right College for You, presented by Mickey Roberts and the Chris Wall Center at Framingham State University. My name is Therese Acton Roberts, and I am the center coordinator. We're so happy to bring that you're here tonight, and we'll give everyone a moment to get connected before we settle in. I'll be letting a few more people in the next couple of minutes. So thank you for joining us for this important and exciting conversation about finding the college that truly fits each student's needs and goals. Before we begin, I'd like to share the Chris Wall Center mission statement. This is something we do at the beginning of each webinar or event that we have. The Chris Wall Center is here to serve the community and provide information to family and educators about a continuum of educational supports available to students with disabilities, students who are gifted, and students with unmet needs. The center offers support, workshops, and other programming for families, educators, student support professionals, administrators, and advocates in Massachusetts. The center also conducts in scholarly research and provides educational preparation and professional development. We're thrilled to be able to offer you this incredible educational series at no cost, and thanks to the generosity of local businesses and community members like you. This year marks our 5th anniversary, and we've launched a fundraising campaign to keep programs at no and low cost. If you find tonight's session helpful, please consider making a donation to support our work. Small
Absolutely.
contributions add up and help makes programming like this possible. I'll put the donation link in the chat. Um, Much of our work is also supported through grants, and feedback is essential in helping us continue to meet the needs of local families. Later tonight, we'll share a brief survey link with you so you can share your thoughts and help us plan future events. We have an upcoming event, which is part 2 of this series, College Decisions Made Important Next Steps for a Successful Transition. That will happen online again on January 28th at 7 p.m. I'll be sending an email next week with the registration link. A quick note before we begin, tonight's session is being recorded and will be shared on YouTube channel. If you'd like to speak, please use the raise the hand feature and you'll be invited to do so. But if you prefer, you can type your questions and comments in the chat at any time during the presentation, and I will be organizing them. I'll make sure to read them out loud for Mickey during the Q&A session. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Mickey Roberts. Mickey is a higher education leader who spent more than 25 years helping students discover and build their strengths as they transition and succeed in college. Most recently, she served as the Associate Dean of Student Success at Clark University Becker School of Design and Technology, where she developed programs that empowered students to thrive academically and personally. Mickey has also led advising and learning opportunities initiatives at Becker College with a deep focus in helping students identify the environments and strategies where they thrive. With degrees in psychology from Southern New Hampshire University and an MAD in higher ed administration from Northeastern University, she brings a wealth of insight and compassion to this important topic. Please join me in welcoming Mickey Roberts.
Good evening. Thank you, Therese, very much. Thank you, everybody, for attending. I hope you find this really beneficial for your up and coming campus journeys. Tonight, I'd like to go through some key questions to ask during campus visits, explore the resources available, and talk about ways to figure out if a college feels like the right fit for you. I encourage you to take notes, reflect, and ask any questions during the question and answer portion. And this is all about helping you make informed decisions as you and your student go and look at colleges in the near future. So thank you again.
You and your students. So let's look at this again for the parents.
Excuse me?
It is for parents and students, and that's how it was advertised. So it's for parents looking for their students going to college. And if there's students joining us tonight, it will be beneficial for them too. But it was geared towards parents to be able to work with their students, but students joining tonight, it will be beneficial for them too.
Correct. Okay, so for the campus visit, what to look for? Therese, that would be the next slide. Thank you. So there's a lot of things when you first go to the campus for a visit. The first thing you want to do is look at the academic piece, and you want to make sure that you ask about the majors, you want to ask about class size, who you can talk to if you have questions, about your program or program of interest. Meet with faculty advisors, gives you a better understanding um, about what your interest or your major may offer. So, for example, a student um, may be interested in biology, but they really want the concentration to be in research. Make sure that institution, um, along with the biology, does offer research because not all schools or institutions do. So really understanding what that major is, what the concentrations are, and is it going to meet the need of the student and what they're looking for. The other thing is the experience when you're on campus. So when you're walking around campus and your students walking around campus, can you picture yourself there? The size of the college, the distance between classes, are the students and staff welcoming? Do you have the chance to shadow a student or sit in on a class? These experiences can really help you imagine daily life. Um, Most times, they have orientations and special sessions for students who are looking to apply to colleges or thinking about going there. And you want to take full advantage of these sessions and really get a feel for what is offered and what the life is like there on campus. Because for many students, the transition from high school to higher ed is a bigger transition than the students realize, and even some parents may realize. If a student is used to being homeschooled or attending a private school or has maybe 10, 12 students in a class, um, going from that environment to a college environment, even at a small college, can be very overwhelming. So it's really important to make sure that the opportunities for the visits and the experience on campus are utilized to the best of your ability, the student's ability, so that they can really get a feel um, for what it would be like to be on that campus. And I can't stress that enough because oftentimes, even in my role at the college, some students really participated in came to everything that was being offered, and other students just accepted and really didn't come and participate in some of the things that were offered. And once they got to the college, it was very different, and they found it that it was a much bigger school than they had thought, or the individuals or the students were different than what they thought. So it really is important to make sure that this is going to be a good fit for you and your student. Um, Next slide, Therese, please. Therese.
I'm right here. I'm just give me a second.
Yeah, no problem.
There it is. Sorry about that.
Yes, thank you. This one's really important. Academic and personal supports. Academic supports, when you're visiting a school and an institution, you want to ask what academic supports are available. So are there, you know, options for tutoring, for study workshops, peer mentoring, other types of program like that? Find out if there are limits or schedules for using these resources. And these supports can be really helpful for student success and for them to feel confident in classes. And the reason this is really important is because I've worked at Becker and I've worked at Clark, so I'll base my experiences on that as far as in higher education. And it was very different. At one institution, you could go to tutoring for multiple classes, multiple times a week, and you would fill out and look where there were openings during the week, and you could go and utilize that service. At another institution, students were only allowed 2 tutoring visits per week. And that was due partly to staffing and to make sure that all students who wanted access to tutoring had the opportunity to utilize it if they wished to. For many students, two sessions is not enough. Some could use 2 sessions just for one course. And especially students who may have some type of learning disability, they need more support and more help in some of their courses. So they may be fine in a philosophy class and not need tutoring or support, but in another course, they may need to go there multiple times a week. So you want to make sure that you're aware of the availability, if there's any restrictions to how often or for what courses. Some courses at one institution did not even have tutors for courses. At the other institution, every course pretty much had at least one tutor for that course. So it's really important to understand what academic supports are available, and the frequency of the resources and how to access those resources. Um, if a student is on an IEP or a 504 plan, it's important to ask how these services carry over to the college level. Check on accessibility services and housing supports, colleges want the students to succeed and their offices to help these students. Um, but it's important that you understand that um, not all supports that may have been provided in the IEP or the 504 at the high school level are going to transfer over to the college level. So, for example, one of the ones that generally will is extended time on tested and quizzes, as long as you have the proper documentation that's provided to accessibility services. That one generally will transfer over. One that generally does not is students being given extra time on assignments. And the reason that is not generally given is because prior to the beginning of class or the first day of classes, the students should be receiving a syllabus for each of their courses. The syllabus outlines everything for the entire semester. So at that point, it is seen and felt that that is the student's opportunity to know what the expectation is for the next 3 months. So therefore, with the syllabus and making sure they're reviewing their syllabus, the opportunity for extensions on homework or assignments is not going to happen. Due to an extreme medical concern, say there was a hospitalization or something on that idea, then you would work with accessibility services and the faculty member, and generally there would be a week or 2 weeks, depending on the medical situation, for the student to be able to have time to make up that work. But generally speaking, that accommodation is not going to transfer over. When you're looking at health and wellness, like counseling services, medical support, mental health concerns, those are all part of ensuring students feel supported, and knowing these supports exist can make the transition to college much easier. But again, make sure you understand what counseling provides, what the medical or nursing department on campus provides, because again, with my experience, one institution I was at, there were not limits on counseling sessions. Counseling sessions did not need to be made a month ahead of time, nor was there like a cap, like a 9 visit cap for the semester. Another institution I worked at, there was that cap. You needed to make sure that you called and registered for an appointment. There were no walk-ins. They did have an emergency time from 1 to 2 p.m. on certain days. If a student was in crisis, they could go in at that time. And also, they felt if a student needed weekly or biweekly counseling, that it was more appropriate that they have an outside provider and not so much a provider on campus. And again, it was around resources and what was available. So those are types of questions you're going to want to make sure you ask and are aware of, because especially for students with any type of physical need or mental health need or experiencing some type of loss or trauma, knowing what you have available for counseling or the medical on campus, the nursing department is really, really important. Um, Also with the nursing department, they do not handle any of the prescriptions. They don't handle any medical medication pieces like that. Generally, all your prescriptions would still go through your current provider. It's best if you can get a 90-day supply at one time, versus a 30-day supply, because what we were finding is there were shortages on medication. So say for our ADHD students, there would be 2-week lapses sometimes in between when they could refill a prescription and get the next one filled because the pharmacy didn't have the medication that they required. So those things are really, really important to know. Um, Therese, you can go to the next slide. Campus and community. The location and comfort. Consider where the campus is and the surrounding area. It can be really overwhelming for the students, especially first year students, if they've come from a small high school, a small town, to then be in the middle of a city, and not clear on how to navigate, or is the neighborhood safe? Are they comfortable there? Are there nearby amenities accessible? And one of the ones I'm thinking of is your student is responsible for their medication. You need to make sure there is a pharmacy if you are not going to assist your student with making sure they have their medication. Many of the students would have to use nearby pharmacies to the college, and one was a block away, but many students needed the other pharmacy, which was like halfway across town, and there wasn't one nearby. So what does that look like? And what's the transportation available for students on campus? Um, is there a bus that goes by? Is there types of sometimes colleges have shuttles that will take the students to a Walmart on a certain day, or will take a route around the city, where students can get on and off to get groceries, to buy different things that they may need during the week. So it's really important to make sure your student is comfortable with the location, what's available in the neighborhood, where the college is sitting. Is it urban? Is it more rural? Those type of things. Also, for future planning for the students, um, does the campus provide a center, like a career center, where they can help them with internships, jobs, long-term success within the careers that they're looking at? Another piece is, what do they, or do they provide on campus housing? Now, yes, they provide on-campus housing, but it can be different at different institutions. For instance, some institutions require that all freshmen live on campus the first year. Some do not. Some will let first years commute. Others really want them there so they are able to form a community and be and make friends and join extracurricular activities, which really helps the student to be able to acclimate to the campus community. Some institutions have first and second year housing, but juniors and seniors may live off campus. Those are things you want to make sure you're aware of, depending how far away the student is living, or your home is from the campus that you choose to attend, for college. Another piece is checking in around housing. In regards to housing, is around the actual accessibility needs a student may have. So, is there single rooms available for first year students? Generally, there is, depending on the type of need for a single room. Say for instance, your student has Crohn's disease or something on that idea where they need not only their own single room, but they need a bathroom within that single room. Those rooms are very, very limited, especially for first years. So you want to make sure you know what that availability is. Oftentimes there's singles with single private bathrooms, there's doubles, there's triples, there's even quads or five in a dorm, that share a living space, and then some may be a double or a triple in a room, and there may be one or two singles within that quad area. So depending what your student needs for housing accommodations, that's really important. Do they need or have a support animal? Does the institution allow them to have that support animal? What type of support animals are allowed on campus? What else regarding housing? And the reason housing is so important, and especially for students who may require the single and the is because you want to make sure there's other individuals that are going to be around or available. Students, first year students, the first couple weeks are really fun and really good. But then they start to settle in, and by week 4 or 5, we start to see a lot of homesickness, because they're away from their family, they're away from friends, they're trying to meet new friends. For some people, it's easier than others. Um, and having a single can further isolate a student, and if a student already tends to isolate, it can be really hard for them to venture out if the only thing they're doing is going to class and then coming back to their room, and then they're alone in their room. And they're not big on extracurricular activities. You want to find out, are there at this campus, are there activities or clubs that would be of interest to your student to help them to be able to meet new friends if that's something that can be difficult for them? Or are there people there that will help students kind of integrate in to this new campus community. Because for many students, that is really, really important, except especially for the accessibility students. So the housing piece is extremely important, as well as the medical and the supports that are available to the students on campus. So that is an area I can't express enough to really look into and make sure you know what's available, what's not, what is for first years, what is for second years, and so on. Um, I think that's it on that slide, Therese. If you can go to slide 5. So making your final choice. As a family, I think it's really important once you visited the campuses to really reflect and sit down with your student and talk about what did you feel went well, what did you not like. Um, Not all any campus that I can think of is going to meet all your needs, but what is the priority? Um, what is most important to you and your student? And is that going to be provided, and are those needs going to be met to support the success for your student to be on campus? Um, the other piece that's really important is, did the student feel comfortable and can they imagine being happy there for at least a semester or more? And does the campus provide the support they're going to need both academically and socially? Um, like I said, for many students, there's a lot of pieces to navigate, and you really want to make sure that you've had time to visit with accessibility services, the housing department, any additional supports that may be offered on campus, the tutoring, faculty, advising, so they can all really give you the best picture possible of what can be provided for your student. And be, be honest, be asking those tough questions and making sure that they can provide what your student is going to need to be successful when they start attending the college of their choice. The other piece is, which I covered a little bit, is the clubs and the organizations are really important. What's there for leadership roles, volunteering, campus jobs, all things that are going to help prepare them moving forward with their careers, and the supports that are there to help them um, to engage outside of the classroom, because that is going to be key in helping the student feel supported and connected. And like I said, no campus is perfect. No campus is going to hit on every single piece, but it's really important to know what what points have to be met um for you and your student, what is going to make them most successful in this journey. um and and Another question I can think of, even academically, is what is considered full time when your student starts at the college? Is 5 classes considered full time, or is 5 what most students take, but 4 classes are considered full-time. Does it make sense that the student start with the 4 classes to see and get used of that transition from high school to college, and the workload and the expectations of the classes and the amount of homework and just helping them to ease in and be able to be as successful as they can and feel supported by all the different departments on campus. It is, I can't stress enough how important it is to make sure that you're fully aware of all the supports, the type of the supports your student is going to need, and can this be fulfilled? Because some campuses do a really good job with it, and other campuses, due to whether it's funding or staff availability or whatever, are not able to provide the same type of services that another institution may be able to. So it's really important to ask those questions and to know that.
Mickey, you still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so now that we've reached the question and answer session of this webinar, um, Mickey, while we're on the topic that you were just talking about,
Yep,
the implication of why is knowing full-time status important? Maybe you can talk about the implication of like financial aid and that implication of like the difference between
sure.
full-time and not full-time.
Right. So you always, there's many reasons you want to know this, but there is a financial aid piece. And if a student goes below what is considered full-time and say they fall into part-time status, it can impact the amount of money that is paid towards the tuition. You can not receive full um, reimbursement for that semester if the student falls below a certain amount of credits for the semester. So it's really, really important. Even with scholarships, make sure you know if your student receives a scholarship, what are the stipulations on the scholarship? Because sometimes there is no stipulation as long as they're taking classes and they pass with a certain average, then there's no problem for the scholarship. Other scholarships do have um, the piece where if they fall below, say, 9 credits or less, or 11 units or less, then it impacts the scholarship and they may not receive the scholarship for the next semester. Um, the plus of being able to choose if it's, say, 5 is what everybody's taking, but 4 courses is still considered full time. It allows, like I said, which is important from my perspective for the student, it gives them that extra cushion to go in that first semester and not be totally overwhelmed, depending on the courses that they're taking. And the reason I say that is because depending on a student's major, can determine what that first semester looks like, because even though they're coming in as first year first semester and there's an expectation that they will take a couple electives, if you're a nursing student, if you're a bio student, there are certain classes they have to take, and they have labs, which is an additional class, even if it only meets once or twice a week, and it adds an additional credit or unit on to what they're doing, and it really can impact the amount of work that they receive that semester versus a student who may be going in and is thinking of being an English major or a history major. Their course load that first semester is going to look very different than a nursing student or a biology student or something like that.
Um, thank you, Mickey. If you
Yeah.
have any questions, put it in the chat. I have some topics I'd love Mickey to talk about. I'll wait for questions too, but I was going to ask her some myself. Maybe can you talk about the process of meeting with disability services? When people, I hear this all the time. I used to work at a boarding school for kids with learning disabilities and ADHD. And
Hmm.
kids often tell me, I want to do college myself. Um, they like, if I need services later, I will go and check in for the services later.
Yeah.
I'm very successful, I'm an honor school student. Like, I don't think I'm going to need disability services in campus. So they don't even interview the disability services. So maybe you can talk about why that might not necessarily be the right philosophy, and also why interviewing disability services is an important part of maybe choosing your college.
Absolutely. And I would say, Therese, that's probably one of the most important things is I can't tell you how many times I hear the students say, I just want to be normal and I just want to go to college and let's do a clean slate. And I oversaw disability services for years in higher ed, and I cannot stress enough that the student should be very forthcoming with what they were receiving for supports in high school, what they feel they may need in college. And even if your student does not want to register with disability services, please send them your documentation. Once you've chosen the college, make sure they get the documentation. But during your visit, sit down and talk with accessibility services, meet the people in accessibility services, because this department is going to be one of the most important departments for you and your student through their 4 years of college. They're the ones that are going to help them in times of crisis, in when there's something going on in the classroom, something going on personally. They're in between person between them and faculty. And it is really important that you feel this department can provide the services your student is going to need, that you feel a connection with the people in this department. Um, and I highly, highly recommend that the student fill out the documentation, provide the necessary documentation to accessibility services, and at least it's on file and on record. So, should at some point the student want to access the and have the ability to utilize their accommodations, they can do so. If the student doesn't do that in the beginning process, because I can tell you, we're talking 700 plus students at both institutions I worked at, um, were enrolled in accessibility services. So if you do not do that initially, it can be weeks or months once the school season's semester starts before they can get an appointment and get in there and be able to go through the process of registering with accessibility services, because there's so much going on that first month, making sure those that are enrolled in accessibility services are getting their accommodations, are getting their academic accommodations, their housing accommodations, any medical accommodations, any accommodations in the classroom as far as for those who may be physically impaired. Um, making sure classrooms are on the right floor for a student who may be blind and cannot be climbing stairs or whatever. So it is extremely important. Register with that department, meet with the people in that department, and have things in place. And some students may not need it for all 4 or 5 courses. They may find they can do just fine in their English course and their history course, but they really, really need the accommodations for their math course. Some use it for all testing quizzes, midterms and finals. I've had other students who only access it for midterms and or finals. There's lots of different options. There's lots of different things, but having registered prior to the beginning of school, the beginning of classes, and being and meeting and talking to that department, accessibility services, and housing is extremely important through the whole summer before the student even gets there.
Yeah, just to reiterate, most colleges will tell you that it takes at least 3 to 4 weeks to review documentations. So say
Correct.
your student decides to go in and on their own and comes around midterms time and they're struggling and they feel like they need accommodations, that's like say week 6 or 7. By the
Correct.
time they get the paperwork processed, you're talking about maybe week 10 or 11, and you've lost the whole semester. That's why the recommendation is as soon as your student gets accepted is to get the paperwork in. But that's also why you should interview at this stage your disability or accessibility services, just for you to learn a little bit about it. Sometimes when you go to accessibility services or something, you can ask to possibly talk to another student on campus. They can't give out the people's information, but they might talk to students if people might want to talk to other students. That's a recommendation to check. An example I recently heard of, if you have a physical disability and you're in a wheelchair, it might help if there's another person on campus to ask you how they feel like getting around the particular campus is in a wheelchair. Um, things like um, things like that. Um,
Right. And off of that, to raise, that's why I had brought up the physical piece, because not all colleges are handicap accessible. They may be in some buildings and other buildings may be grandfathered in. So to Teresa's point, if you have a student in a wheelchair and they have a course in a building that's been grandfathered in, and they don't register with disability services and they get to class and find out they have a class on the second or third floor of a building, but there's no elevator, it could take weeks to try to switch that class with another faculty member, depending on the needs of other students that may be in that class that have accessibility issues. So it's really important to do that ahead of time, way ahead of time.
yeah, so I definitely think that's important, and that's why I definitely think you might need to talk to your student because they want to be quote unquote normal and they maybe don't want the stigma to be around. But I think speaking from, I have a language-based learning disability, and I know to this day I wouldn't have been successful at my institution, which was UMass. It's huge. If I didn't go to disability services. My first semester, they actually took the schedule I had planned during orientation with the individual, and then they made all suggestions. So I think that's too, sometimes accessibility services can make suggestions on classes in order, and that's a good thing. And they also were able to pair me up in some peer mentor. I think Mickey mentioned different schools have different services, and
Correct.
me being connected with a peer mentoring service was very important for me, so that when I was maybe like frustrated about my disability, I had a peer group that I could talk to, and that helped a lot in my 4 years as an undergrad. Um, um, yeah, and then maybe we can also talk about how different colleges, and a question I would have is different colleges have different ways to adapt certain accommodations. One accommodation that you could interview for is, what is their note-taking policy on helping students take notes? There's different ways. Like at my institution at UMass, I had different ways in which they handled it. Sometimes the graduate student in the class would take notes on carbon paper and give me a copy of it. Other times I needed to find a tutor, a note taker in my class, and accessibility services would give them an extra credit to take the notes. But then it was like, are your child going to be free of disclosing, like, that they need the person, they ask the faculty member to make a list, but if nobody volunteers, then what's the disability note taking? So I don't know if you want to talk more about like how different services might be.
Yeah. Right. And that's why again I really emphasize getting to know the accessibility services office, because from college to college it varies. It varies a lot as to, in this case, the note taking. Like Therese said, I one institution I worked at, when we knew a student needed a note taker, we in disability services would find the note taker, have them take notes from the class, make sure we would talk to the faculty member that the student we were reaching out to was a very good student in the class. The student would turn the notes into us, and then we, for confidentiality reasons for the student, would turn the notes over to the student. Um, others, other institutions have the student find a note taker in the class, and if the student is willing, they earn a credit, or some students were even paid, sort of almost like a tutoring type position, but they would be paid for taking notes, and they would be provided to that student in the class. So it really does vary. Some suggest and are allowed to record with the faculty's permission, can record the lecture, um, and that is considered the note taking. So it's really, really important, if that's something a student would need, that you find out what the policies are. And all of the accessibility departments should have in writing what is provided and what does that look like for note taking, for test taking. Um, Oftentimes, if a student needs extended time on tests and quizzes, that does not happen in the classroom with the faculty, or taken the um, same time as the other students within that class, because with the extended time, a faculty member may have a class right after that class. So they can't stay with the student in order to make sure they get the extra time. So the student has to register with disability services, accessibility services, and set up on this day at this time. I need to come in and take a course for this professor. And then there's a whole process where disability services reaches out to the faculty member, has them send the exam or test over. When the student comes, they're put into a testing area or testing room where students go for different, it could be 5 students in that testing area, all taking a different test. And then they're provided the test from the faculty member. Disability Services is responsible for tracking the extended time for that student, and then when the student finishes, getting the test back to that faculty member.
Yeah, I mean,
And,
that's
and some require a week's notice, some requires a 48-hour notice. So again, it's really dependent on the institution and what they have in their information for the department as to what they require and request from the student.
Another one I think that it's important to ask around this day and age, and my daughter's only in middle school, but I'll definitely be asking this question when the college search happens, is how does the university help with audiobooks for textbooks? When I was in college, that was they connected me with the Blind Association, but it was my job to reach out, and if they happen to have the book, the audio version of the book, they happen to have it, but often textbooks weren't audio book. I know today it's different. I'm an instructor at a
Mhm.
university too, and they you know, I've had, disability services reach out to me. Maybe you could talk about maybe how that accommodation is handled at different maybe questions parents should ask, if like what questions I should ask for my daughter who has dyslexia going and getting textbooks, speech to text, or also they have different softwares that schools, sometimes the school at my university had an um accessibility soft they had an accessibility computer lab to help out.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Most institutions at this point um, do provide text to speech, and also it is there will be a requirement from the student prior to the beginning of the semester. Once they know what their courses are and they know what books are required, it is the student's responsibility to get the books and the authors to accessibility services, and then accessibility services, generally speaking, will reach out and make sure they get the text needed for the individual student. And oftentimes they can do it according to what the student is used of using. Um, some institutions have multiple licenses to different um, companies that provide the textbooks. And then other institutions have limited availability and can be based on what they have or don't have access to. But it is the student's responsibility prior to the semester and by several weeks, because it does take time for accessibility services to get access to those books.
So if I was, searching for my daughter Bella, I would definitely ask what that process look like, because I know how I struggled with that um
Yeah.
when I was in college. Um the other thing, if anybody has any questions, feel free to type them in. Some last questions um I had is I didn't know when I went to college that I could possibly ask for a single. Like, I didn't know that a learning disability and ADHD would qualify me as a single. I thought like I had to have a physical disability. So I feel like maybe you could talk about um, areas or disabilities or
Mhm.
requirements for housing that could possibly qualify you for a single.
I would say the biggest ones I've seen that qualify a student for a single would be students with an autoimmune deficiency or concerns around that, students with Crohn's or issues where they need privacy for what their concern or issue may be. I've seen students receive singles depending on the type of medication they're on. Um, there we had a student, I can think of one specifically, this student was very, very sick, and had multiple diagnoses, um, required, one-on-one care while at the institution, and needed an attendant with them, at all times to be on campus. And these attendants are medically trained. Should something happen with the student, that they can jump in and assist the student while waiting for um, either campus police or the town or city police to respond to a medical situation. Um, and for that reason, they would be allowed to have a single because of the type of care they require and what is needed and space for their attendant. Um, let's see. One thing, if you have a student who is diabetic, you want to make sure there are refrigerators available. Not all dorm rooms come with small refrigerators, and you want to make sure they allow refrigerators. Um, we've had students who have severe allergies and need air conditioning. Make sure they're allowed to have a separate air conditioning unit if they need to, because some buildings are not equipped to handle that. And so that they can't allow for that, for one student and not other students, because the overload could blow the circuits in the building and stuff if it's an older building. So keep those things in mind as well. Um, and generally too, depending on the type of medication a student may be on, the medications will need to be locked in the room of the student so other students can't access it.
Okay.
So.
Stephanie, Lo, or Leslie, do you guys have any questions that you would like to ask Mickey? We'll have a second part of this in January talking about once you get accepted, the exact things you should do. But this was to really be focusing on what information you should know to like interview your college to try to find the right match. But if you
No, I
have
thought it was a great presentation.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you.
And I learned a little bit, and I never thought about homesickness because I do a similar presentation, and I'm like, that's a really big thing to consider. So
It,
thank you.
you would be shocked the homesickness that we deal with first year students, and especially students who choose to have a single room
Yeah. And a
and
lot of kids with autism want that
that's exactly
thing,
who I'm
and
thinking of, is my kids on the spectrum. Yes.
yeah. And
And
I need that privacy, and
yes, and they
it's hard.
end up
It's hard
being
for
so
kids to
isolated.
figure
Right.
that out. But that was very enlightening. So thanks for that tidbit. I learned something
Absolutely.
tonight.
Yes, it's hard because they get so isolated having the single, and it's difficult for them to just go out and meet friends, and we find they start going to class and then to the dining hall, and then all of a sudden they stop going to the dining
Dining
hall,
hall.
then they stop going to class, and it's just a really bad
The other tip
snowball.
we give families is when you're thinking about schools to really go onto their websites and look at their accessibility or disability services
Yes,
and what is required to apply for services, because each one has their own kind of way
absolutely.
of asking for different information. So you can kind of do a lot of things in advance. The other tip that I suggest is that if a student is interested in college, that they take maybe a community college
Yeah,
class their junior year, or go to a camp that's on a college campus to kind of get that experience of living on a college campus for 2 weeks or a week. And
right.
learning that the bathroom's down the hall and you got to remember to bring your shampoo. It's the little things that make or break a college experience. And if they can
Absolutely.
kind of experience it, it's a little bit better.
Right. And to your point too, Leslie, not only do certain institutions require certain
Documentation.
documentation, but they also, some of them have different requirements in what they'll take for the dates on the documentation.
Yes, it
So
has to
some will
be,
take 3 to 5, some will only take 1 to 3.
yeah.
So it really is dependent on the institution. And
And
it's
it's
costly to go out and get a new eval done.
so if you are on an IEP in a high school environment, graduation is considered a change of placement, which could
Correct.
trigger an evaluation. And so you could work with your high school to get the appropriate adult level testing that's required by the colleges as part of your transition services. I
Right.
think there's some conversation that could happen there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and parents need to know to ask because sometimes they'll be like, you'll be up for your 3-year evaluation come late junior year or senior year, and they'll be like, oh, it's not necessary to,
That's
Exactly.
necessary.
but it is
And
necessary.
it is. It's very important. Yes.
So, yeah, it's good for parents to know that. Any other tips, Leslie? Leslie's from for everybody to know, she's from I'm gonna mess up the name, the Federation
For
for,
children with special needs,
Nice.
FCSN.
Very nice.
No, was the fly on the wall tonight. I really enjoyed your presentation. I thought you
Thank you.
had a unique approach and it was very practical and informative. So thank you very much. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
I did
Chris
drop
Paul Center, once again for a great presentation.
Thank you, Leslie. I did drop a link in the chat, but I will also be sending this out with the recording out. Plus, Mickey has a resource that she's going to share. It will come out in an email next week. And Leslie, please feel free to share it with MassPack. And
I
yeah,
Yeah.
will.
But if you guys can complete this survey again, we always try to, get feedback for our presentations. With that, I'd like to thank Mickey for her time and her wonderful presentation, and thank you and everyone who joined us tonight for your engagement and thoughtful participation. Um, one more reminder that we have the second part of this series, the college decision made. The important next step for a successful transition will be January 28th at 7 p.m. And registrations will be included in the following follow-up email next week. Thank you again for spending your evening with us. Your participation helps us continue to make a positive impact in our community and better support young people we serve. We appreciate your dedication to your family, students, and your own growth. We truly can't do this work without you. Have a wonderful evening, and we hope to see you again soon.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much. This was great.
Thank
Thank you,
you, Stephanie.
Stephanie.
I am stopping the recording.